Hey guys, it's Elena. Today I'm going to talk about triptychs and I'm going to show you how to make one with digital alcohol ink in Procreate. So what is a triptych? I had to look up how to say that. It's a piece of artwork that consists of 3 panels that are meant to be displayed together. So it's a popular format in both traditional art, but it can also be created digitally. And one thing to keep in mind when creating a triptych is that each panel should be able to stand alone as a piece of art, but it should also work together as a cohesive whole. I'll give you some tips on how to achieve this while still maintaining a consistent theme and a color scheme within the Procreate app on the iPad. So I'm going to use my alcohol ink brushes, which are available for purchase from the link in the description in my shop. You're very welcome to use this concept with any brushes or any type of art that you are interested in, that you enjoy doing. So this is just kind of to show you the technicalities of how I do it. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is one that I made a little while back just to test out the concept, and this is what we're going to be making, something like this. So to start out with, we want to make a canvas that is 26 by 12 inches. And this will allow us to create 3 pieces that are 8 by 12 inches each, which is kind of a standard printing size, at least in the US. Then we will have 3 pieces that are 8 by 12 inches. If you have an older iPad without a lot of memory, you can size this down because we do need to be able to make 9 layers within the canvas. So if you have an older iPad, go ahead and make a canvas that is 20 by 9 inches instead, and then your smaller pieces will be 6 by 9. Okay, with all that said, we're going to make the new canvas by going to the plus icon here, and then where it says new canvas and we have this little icon, this is where you need to go to make the new canvas. And we want to change it to inches, or you can just do whatever you want to, but this is what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to make the width 26 inches and the height is 12 inches. We can do 8 by 12 3 times with an inch in between, and I'll show you what I mean. But if your iPad is different than mine, your maximum layers might be smaller here. We need at least 9. So I'm going to go ahead and do create. So now we have this nice long canvas at 300 dpi, because that means that if you print this out, it's going to come out crystal clear. So the first thing that we're going to do now, setting up our canvas, is go to the wrench icon, and it might be on one of these other tabs. You just want to go to the canvas icon, and where it says drawing guide, turn that on. And now immediately we're just going to edit the drawing guide. Okay, so what we want now is we want the 2D grid and not any of these other ones. You can see down here, it's not super obvious how to change the grid size, but if you go over here where it says grid size and then it's got the pixel dimension here, if you click on that little area, you actually get to change the size of the grid numerically, which is a lot easier for this project. So what we want to do, since we did the canvas size in inches, we're going to do inches here, and then we're just going to add a 1. And that means that each of these squares is now 1 inch, and that's what it prints out at 300 dpi. So this will help us to kind of size things just right. So click done when that is done. So now we have our canvas all measured out in 1 inch squares. Okay, so now that we've got our canvas full of 1 inch squares, what we're going to do is go to the ribbon tool, and we're still setting up the canvas. We're going to select the area of one panel, and then we're going to duplicate that over. So once you've hit the ribbon tool, we've got all these options. We're just going to go with rectangle, and color fill might be on or not on, but what we want to do is turn it on and select white, double tapping over by the white. Okay, so now whatever we select is automatically going to be filled with white. So what we want to do is over here in the top corner, we're going to start our square outside of the canvas. So you can see I'm going to start it right about here. And we want to do it like that outside of the canvas because we don't want any edges to come through. So this means that our selection is going to go all the way up to the edge of the canvas. And now we just need to count 8 squares in. So let's go ahead and count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now we have 8 squares and a tiny bit extra. So you can see here the dotted line of the selection is just on the other side of the 8th square. So that means that whenever we resize this later, we will definitely have enough space to resize exactly 8 by 12 inches. So now I'm going to let that up. And it didn't look like anything happened, but actually, once I turn that off, you can see that I do in fact have a panel here. So I turned the background off so that you can see it because they're both white. And we're just going to leave the background off now so that we can see in between the different panels. And what we're going to do is just duplicate that new panel layer twice. And they're just duplicating in place. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move them over by selecting the arrow tool. And you might want to have snapping on, which helps you get it just in the right spot over here in the corner. Boom. That's one. And the next one, that over. And that should be in the middle. And you can see we do have a little bit of space in between each panel so that we can see where the panels are. And they're each just a little bit bigger than the 8 squares across. So now we have 3 separate panels, all in their own separate layers, and we can make an artwork that will sweep across all of them, just like we would do if we were in real life. We would put out the different canvases and then make them all at the same time so that they sort of correspond with each other, but also are standalone artwork pieces. So this is the way I like to work with it. So now what we can do is add a layer above that, and we're just going to do our alcohol ink in that layer. So I'm actually going to rename everything at this point just so I can keep track of what I'm doing. So that one is panel 1, and we've got panel 2, panel 3, and this one is going to be alcohol ink. And this is where your process comes in. So you might not even be doing alcohol ink, you might be doing something else, and you might need several layers for that. But I usually do all my alcohol ink in one layer, and then I do one layer above that called metallics. So I'm just gonna get this set up now. So now I'm completely set up for the first part. So in my alcohol ink layer, I'm going to go ahead and just add some artwork. Okay, so I have decided to use my alcohol ink brights color palette, and this is one that you can have for free. I will go ahead and put the link to download that in the description below. So the brushes that I will be using are, of course, my alcohol ink brushes, and you can also find a purchase link for those in the description if you're interested in working with these brushes or if you don't have them already. And you can also do this concept with so many different brushes. You can also make a triptych in Procreate with just the standard brushes that come with it. And I just really want to encourage you to experiment with whatever you have and just see where it takes you with this. It's really fun to do abstract triptychs. So anyway, I'm just going to be using my alcohol ink brushes here. I totally forgot to tell you, when you've done setting this up, it's going to be a bit distracting, this grid. So I like to just go and turn off the grid. Up in the wrench and drawing guide off. So now we've got our canvas and we don't have to look at those squares. With the grid turned off, we're still working with the alcohol ink brights color palette and the alcohol ink brushes. And I think what I decided that I want to do is I want to start out with a kind of a whoosh going from down here all the way up like that, and then do the same thing over here so that we've got a little bit of both whooshes in each of the different panels, but they're each kind of their own thing. So I wanted to start with color changing number 2, and you can choose 2 different colors for this. So I wanted to go with a blue and a bright pink, like this. And blue is going to be my primary color, whereas the pink is going to come out while I'm tilting. So with color changing number 2, let's just see where this takes us. Just going to make that brush a little smaller, but still keeping it pretty large. Okay, I think I'm okay with that. And I'm going to keep these 2 colors the same, but I'm going to switch. So this one is now my primary color. That's my secondary. You can see that really a lot of the pink didn't come out here. It just kind of turned the blue a bit purple. And also you can see that I'm drawing across the whole thing. So some of it you can see here is just on the area that's not going to be on any of these panels. And that's fine. We're just doing this all in one go because we want it to kind of correspond. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to start up here, and then tilt my way across. And I'm not lifting up my pen, and I'm just kind of adding a bit more in here. So I wanted to just kind of go with some of these other brushes as well, some of the other color changing brushes, and add some little bits here and there. So there wasn't as much pink up here as I wanted. So I'm just going to see what happens if I just kind of add a little bit of this in. And I'll blend it a bit more later. And I'm still only just using 2 colors and switching back and forth between them. I'm just going to keep on experimenting. I think I'm going to go with number 10, which has got a nice blotch and a splatter that goes with it. I think I'm going to try coming up from here. Oops. And just see if I can kind of get a big blotch on both sides here. Well, that's kind of interesting because this part's not going to show. So we're just going to have the both on that. So I'm working with color changing number 9. And I'm just kind of like lightly just making some marks here and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to switch to a blender brush. I'm going to go with this heavy bleed blender here, and I'm just going to kind of smooth some of the edges here. This one just kind of softens edges, and you can make it as big or as small as you want. But if there's anything that just doesn't look quite cohesive, you can just kind of erase the edges with this. And I'm not going to worry about this part in between because that's not really going to show anyway. So I'm just kind of wanting to blend some of these colors in with each other. So the edge, I decided which edge I want to keep here, and it's the blue one. So I'm just kind of blending some of the other edges. Because with alcohol ink in real life, you're not going to have overlapping edges because one splash pushes another one out of the way. So to make it more realistic, I'm just kind of erasing some of these edges like as if it was like seeping with real alcohol ink, because that's kind of how that works. And now that I said I wasn't going to erase any blue edges, I did actually go and do that. So that blending did kind of erase some of the definition of this texture. So now what I want to do is a different kind of blending. And back into my brushes, I'm going to use the spray blender, and this one adds texture as it blends. So you can see if I just do a little poke of it there, it kind of adds like as if I'm like taking a toothbrush and just going with the alcohol. So that adds some texture. Sometimes a bit too much. Especially wanted to do some blending here. I'm going to just make it big and go crazy with it. With the blender brush is where you start pushing, it's going to push that color out. So I started on the blue, pushed the blue out. And do the same on this pink blob. And that was a bit too much, to be honest. But you see what I mean there? Maybe it's not too much. Don't know. Maybe that's going to be a really splashy area. We'll see. So just a bit more up here. Also, this by the same token, if you go off the edge, it adds white in. Maybe, in fact, I'm going to do some of that here. There we go. The splashing is so much fun because in real life, you have to kind of do this outside or like just somewhere that you do not really care about the floor or anything because it gets everywhere. But it's so much fun. So I really enjoy doing this digitally because I don't have to worry about the mess. I think something really interesting happened here because we've got the splash on both sides of the panel. Okay, I think I want to put some more color in here. So I'm going to go with this super bright yellow and scroll up to color splatter, which is similar to what we were doing before, but it's just adding color instead of blending. So I'm going to be adding some lovely yellow splotches in here. Just love that color combination. And I'm just going to go big right here on both sides, maybe here too. And I want this to be just splatter central right here. So I'm going to go crazy on this. And maybe make it big and do a real big splatter on that. Maybe here too. And what I sometimes do once I've done with the color splatter or the white splatter, I like to go to my circle dropper. So now we've done small splatters. We're going to do a couple of nice big ones, the circle dropper. And you can even do it on top of some of these other ones. So let's say I want to make that even bigger. I'm going to change the size of that and pushing on here, make a nice big blob. And this is all about the pressure. And this is like using a paintbrush and dabbing it on there, and you get a nice little circle. Might be cool to try to make a big blob here and see if it kind of goes on both sides. Might be kind of fun to leave that there, have an edge of it on both of them. I just kind of went over that one that was already there just to kind of give it more definition. Same thing here. Just wanting it to stand out more. And I think I just want to add a bit more white splatter. So I'm going to go up here, double tap for my white, and white splatter brush, get a bit more white on top of some of these areas. So I'm just having a look at this, each individual piece, and the overall as well. So just having a look and then zooming out, and I can see that there is quite a lot of white space here, and I do like that. This one, not so much, and this one has less as well. There's quite a lot of white space here, but I like that because it ties in together. So I think I'm okay with this as it is. There's certainly a lot more that I could do with it, but I'm going to leave it as it is. And as a final step on the artwork itself, I'm going to the metallics layer that I already made. And if you didn't do that, just make a new layer. And it's important that the metallics are in their own layer because of the way that they react with what's already in the layer. So if we were in here using metallics, they might come out looking white. So if you're ever using metallic brushes and they just look white instead of metallic, they probably need to be in a separate layer. So I'm going to go into my color palette and select one of these, not the yellow because that's not going to come out quite right. But I think I want to have kind of a pinkish. I'm just going to go maybe with this. And then I'm going to my value tab and I'm going to take the B slider down so that it's almost like a brown color. And I'm just going to experiment with that. I'm probably going to give it a bit more saturation as well. Let's see how that looks. So scrolling up to the top of my alcohol ink brush set, there are 4 metallic brushes here. So a process that I enjoy doing with these brushes is that I go with the foil liner first, and then I kind of add flakes and specks here and there. I'm just going to look for some lines that I can trace, and that's kind of how alcohol ink, how metallics work in alcohol ink. They kind of pool up in the areas where the ink is the thickest. So I'm kind of looking at this. Now I'm just going to see how this color looks. I think I'm okay with it. It's kind of a nice copper color that ties in with our color palette. So I'm going to keep working with that color. And if you want to use this exact color that I'm using, you can see the hex code here. We've got 835043. So if you don't want to mess around and create your own, you can just go with that hex code. And I'm just going to add lines wherever I feel like it. So when the line gets thicker, that is me putting more pressure on. So thin line is not very much pressure at all. Just adding very little pressure there. And then if I want a lot of pressure, I just push harder. I seem to be having a shaky arm kind of day. I like to use the metallics to kind of connect where we've got 2 different areas and kind of make the line go across everything like here. So now we're moving on to the second one. I'm just looking to see that I'm happy with all of this. Maybe need a bit more here. feel like I've got a lot of small lines, but I probably could use some actual bigger areas. I'm just going to go a bit over some of these again. And moving on. And once I get over here on the part that is not on any of these panels, I'm not really caring how it looks because that will all get cut off. And we're just moving on to the third panel now, or the first, depending which side you're counting from. Lots of pressure there. And this here, I feel like this edge just all along here needs quite a lot of metallics. And I'll come at this with some glitter as well in a minute. Okay, I think that's enough for the foil, and we are not done because now with that same color, I'm going to go for my metallic ink liner and add some flakes like that. And I do like doing this as a two-step process because it gives you control over what is flaky and what is not. And sometimes I also just add flakes where there is not any liner. Going pretty glitter crazy in this area. Sometimes I just give myself permission to go absolutely crazy, but only in a specific area. So we still have tons of white space on here, but I'm going absolutely nuts with the glitter and with everything else over here. And I feel like that's a good way to kind of rein it in and keep it clean and minimalist looking while it's actually not minimalist at all. It's very, very detailed, but only in certain areas. You might be the opposite of me. You might naturally tend towards minimalism, but I find that I have to kind of rein in all the details that I want to do. Just a little bit more. A lot of people ask, how did the metallics print? Because we're kind of working on a piece for print here, I did want to mention that they do not, of course, come out of the printer as metallics because they can't reflect light if they're just printed on regular paper, but they come out as sort of a photo of something shiny. So like if you move it around, it's not going to catch the light. But if you are looking at it from far away, you might be under the impression that it would catch the light because it's just sort of like a realistic photo of something shiny. Okay, so now I'm just going to have a little bit of an overview of what I've done here. This is absolutely insane. Just going to keep looking across. There's quite a lot of white space here. I'm okay with that. And over here, maybe I'm just going to go a bit more nuts on this one because I did on the other side. So I'm just adding a bit more. Okay, so now comes the fun part where we get to divide this into 3 different images that we can then send for print or do whatever else we want to do with them. So in order to do this, we're going to go to the gallery and duplicate. So we're going to duplicate this actually 4 times. because I want to have, just like I've done here, I want to have 1 original and 3 panels. So these will turn into 3 panels. So I'm just going to go into the first one. And in order to crop this, we're going to go to the wrench icon and canvas, crop and resize. So now what we can do is go into settings and turn on snapping. This is more important later on. And what we do is just change the size. So we had decided at the beginning that we wanted to have 8 by 12 inches. So we're going to make this 8. And we're going to keep that at 12 because the whole canvas is 12 inches tall. So hitting done on that, it's actually gone exactly where we want it to go. The other 2 are not going to do that. But if you zoom in on here, you can see that that little bit of overlap we gave ourselves here was really good because now we can crop right onto that without any funny edges. So since that has gone just exactly where we want it, we're just going to hit done. And we've got our first image here. Okay, so now that we've got this one, we're going back to the gallery and we'll go to the next one. And now we want to crop the middle one here. So once again, wrench icon, canvas, crop and resize, setting 8 inches and snapping on. This is really important this time. And you can see that the snapping box has gone over here. We just want to move that box over to the middle. And that snaps into place. And checking the edges, you can see there's ever so slightly bit of overlapping here, and that's what we want so that we don't get any funny edges. So hitting done on that, we have our second panel. So now going back to gallery, we will do the final panel, which is this one. Wrench icon, canvas, crop and resize, 8 inches, snapping, and we move it over. There we go. Checking the edges, everything looks fine. And now we've got our third panel. So you can see out in the gallery, we've got all 3 panels here, and you can kind of get a look at how they're going to look when they're printed out. You can print them using Share and export them as a JPEG or a PNG or whatever you want, send them out to print. So here you can have a look at how all of the panels look up close, and I really enjoy this process because it's kind of giving you the feeling of swooping and swooshing across some big canvases on the floor without any of this mess. And it's nice to just have all 3 panels lined up and do an abstract artwork across all 3 of them that can be separate artworks and also one big artwork when they're put on the wall next to each other. So there you have it. I hope that this tutorial was really helpful for you, and I would love to see what you make, and I'd especially love to see it hanging on your wall. So you're very welcome to tag me on Instagram at Elena Jensen, or you're very welcome to share your artwork in our Facebook group. I'm always happy to see you guys in there as well. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications, as it's really helpful and I always appreciate your support. So thanks again, and I hope to see you next time.